Hey, Tasha, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
I am super pumped to chat with you. So, why don't we start off? Just tell us a little bit about you and your story and what you do.
Sure. I live in Tucson, Arizona with my husband. He's Air Force, so we're stationed here. And I own the Launch Guild, which is an online business management and course launch support agency. So we support mostly coaches and course creators in ongoing operations as well as helping them specifically with their course and podcast launches.
How'd you get into that?
Oh my goodness. So I had a hobby blog like 4 years ago and just started out as a VA out of my hobby blog, seeing that other people in the Facebook groups that I was in for my blog really needed VA support. So I decided to do it kind of as a side hustle. It grew super duper fast to the point of where I quit my full-time job within 6 months of starting my business.
Amazing.
And yeah, it was super fun. And then I started the agency route, which is what my business is. I started the agency route probably a year after that because I saw the fact that I was working with a lot of coaches and course creators, and anytime they were launching something new, we would have to go out, find the graphic designer, find the Facebook ad strategist, hope that they worked and everything. And it just became tedious and time consuming. So I was like, what if I could develop an agency that had all of those people that people need for launches under one roof, basically, and that's what I did with the Launch Guild.
Very cool. Okay, so what is a launch for people that don't know, and what are different kinds of launches?
Yeah, so a launch is any event, I will call it. It's usually about a week to 10 days of a new product. It can be a new service. It can be a new group type of thing. Just something. In our world, it's usually a course either, so a one-off course that people purchase online, or it can also be like a group program that we help support our clients with. And yeah, I think that was the first part of your question. What was your second part of your question? Sorry, I missed it.
I don't even,
Yeah.
pregnancy brain. When people ask me two questions, I'm like, you shouldn't do
I
that.
know.
So I always forget. Oh my gosh. What are the benefits of launching?
Yeah. So the benefits of launching is that you have people excited about your program for like a specific amount of time. In the online space, it's so hard to captivate people's attention. And so when we have that, excitement around a launch, whether it be a challenge or a webinar or something that goes along with it, we really captivate people's attention for that short amount of time, really get energy behind it, and can generate more income for, the course creator.
What are some different kinds of launches that you can do?
So I really enjoy doing launches that start with a webinar. So a webinar or an online training, something that gets people pumped and also gets them to experience the person that they're going to be basically buying from, right? There's this whole thing that we talk about in the online space called know, like, and trust.
Yeah.
And so webinars or live classes get the potential buyer, a little bit of a taste of like, oh, this is, what the person believes strategically, or I really feel like I'm connected to that person. So for my course launches, I really like to do webinars or live trainings. For my group courses, usually a group program has a higher price point. So a lot of times people need a little bit more time to kind of get to know the person, especially because there's usually like a coaching aspect involved in that program. And that's definitely a more personal situation. So I really like challenges for those types of launches for any kind of a group program, because challenges are usually a little bit longer. They're usually like 3 to 5 days inside of a Facebook group where you can really start to get to know the people inside of it and really curate a community and a relationship.
I like it. So when you do the webinar launch, do you just do one webinar or do you do multiple webinars?
Yeah, it's really up to the person. I always like people to at least have 2 webinars scheduled. That way, if God forbid something happens, tech-wise or something in your first webinar, you already have like a container to do it over. And it gives people like an opportunity. Sometimes, maybe you schedule it for Tuesday evening, and Tuesday evenings are, Sally's ballet class. And so you can't get there, but maybe if you have a daytime one on a Thursday or something, you can pick up those people who can't attend your first one.
Got it.
Yeah.
What's a launch runway and why are they
Oh,
important?
yeah. So I think of a launch runway in 2 different veins. In the marketing space, a launch runway is all of the pre-stuff that you need to basically teach your ideal client so that they are prepared and prepped to buy from you. So by the time we get to the actual launch week, we want our ideal client or our potential clients to be what we call hot leads. So we want them like ready and super excited to buy, right? So that doesn't just start on the first day of the launch on open cart. You really have to back it up. At least, I like to do at least 8 weeks, if not 12 weeks, of kind of thinking about, okay, what are the things, number one, what are the things that people need to know in order to understand the value of the course or whatever the product that you're selling is? And number two, what are some of the objections that people often have, and how can you get in front of them so that by the time the cart is actually open, by the time you're actually launching, they're like, oh, I understand, and this is no longer an objection. I'll give you an example. So I'm in the middle of my launch for my course for VAs, for brand new VAs, called Built to Profit right now. And one of the big objections is most of the women who take my course are still in their 9 to 5, right? And most of them are also moms. So they're like, I'm already balancing a 9 to 5 and a kid or multiple kids, and a spouse. How do I put this other thing? Like, even though they really want to start their VA business, like, how are they going to juggle that? So I start Facebook Lives about 4 weeks out before my launch, once a week. And one of my Facebook Lives is like how to juggle a 9 to 5 with starting your VA business, right?
Ooh, that's
That
good.
way I've already answered that objection and they're like, oh, okay. I don't, I know that I can do this in a couple hours a week and just take my time. I don't have to overwhelm myself.
I like that. That's so smart of thinking like ahead of time, just like taking the time to plan of what are these objections that are coming up
Yeah.
and talking about those before you even get to the launch itself.
Yeah, yeah. And then the other piece of a launch runway is actually the planning piece. And that's the piece where I see people falter all the time. And that's why launches often don't feel good during the launch. It's because the person hasn't taken enough time to actually plan. So we like to actually have our clients sign up with us about 12 weeks out so that we can really have a solid plan in something like Asana or Trello, a project management software, so that everybody knows what they're supposed to be doing. All of the emails are already written and scheduled. Like, we know all the topics for social media and for posts and stuff. And then that way, during the actual launch week, the person can fully show up as themselves, fully be present for their audience instead of like feeling like they have to be writing the next day's email, and getting that ready.
For sure. I think just preparing is so important. And then when you do have a team or somebody supporting you, that's everything. So I remember the first 5-day challenge, I did it all on my own. This is like before I had a team. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Like the amount of work that goes into it is just like insanity. Now we have someone on our team who's kind of like a project manager and she sets everything up in Asana and like delegates everything. And that, like, me being able to just show up and be in my zone of genius, that's like everything.
Yes.
It
Yeah.
makes life so much better. Oh my
It
gosh.
really does. Yeah.
So, when you're prepping for a launch, what are some things you need to make sure you have in place?
Yeah. So team is definitely one of them. Figure out where your support systems are.
What if you don't
Even,
have a team yet?
yeah. So
Because I
I
know
would
I did
say,
it. Like when I
I
first did
know.
my first one, like it was me solo.
Yeah, yeah, totally. And I know that it's like, it feels like a big expense, especially when it's your first launch and you don't even know if you're going to make any money off this thing,
Yeah,
right? So I would say have at least a budget to have a virtual assistant who can support you like on your webinar, who can support you in getting your email scheduled. Those smaller things, even if you just get those things taken off your plate, will open up so much space and reduce so much stress for you.
totally.
So yeah, that's usually, a VA is usually the first place to kind of start there. And then excuse me, and then you want to think about, what do you want your launch to be? There's so many different ways to do it. There's so many different ways to plan out your emails and all of those things. So take some time to really think about the strategy around your entire launch, and that way you can kind of reverse engineer the calendar to to mimic what that strategy is going to be. So those are the two big things. Also, if you absolutely can, and this is kind of a big expense, so a lot of times people don't do this until the second round of their launch, I would at least hire a copywriter to look over all of your stuff, like your sales emails and your sales page, because like most of us aren't copywriters. We're not trained to do conversion copy, and there's just little tiny tweaks that you can do in your copy to really get those people to say yes, to understand the value of your product.
That is huge. Okay. So the first time I launched our course, Pin with Purpose, like I did everything myself. It was
Mhm.
like this super ghetto sales page, like everything I did all on my own. And the next time I launched, I was like, I really need to up my game. And so I invested the profits from the first launch and like some money I was making from doing like Pinterest management and stuff like that into getting a copywriter and designer to create like the emails and the sales page and the opt-in page and everything. It was like 5 grand to do that, which was a
Yeah.
big expense at the time. Like
Yeah.
we were probably 4 months into our business. Um, that investment has made us over $500,000.
Yeah, exactly. And the great thing is like you can reuse and repurpose all of that
Yes.
stuff, you know?
Yes.
Like I got a copywriter the first time I launched Built to Profit, and I made some tweaks, you know. I tried out different headlines and stuff for, you know, subject lines and stuff for emails this time, but I didn't have to start from a blank page again. Like, and I'm never going to have to start from a blank page again with that specific course, which is amazing.
Yeah, I mean, with the sales page, like if it's in ClickFunnels or Lead Pages, you could just duplicate it and
Yeah.
then just change the copy around, and yeah,
Yeah.
amazing. Um,
Exactly.
let's go back to the launch runway because this is something that I know a lot of people struggle with, and I see a lot of times people think I'm going to launch next week,
Oh my
and
gosh. Yes.
it's like I want to do it now, which like is cool for taking messy action and like getting it done.
Right.
But if you want to have a more successful launch, you need to have that runway in place. So you
Right.
mentioned like creating videos about objections and having it be ideally like 8 weeks out where
Mhm.
you're really starting to add value. How many times? So I'm guessing this is like a Facebook Live video that you're doing.
Yeah, I like Facebook Lives. They don't work for everybody because I know that not everybody loves video, but you just what the important part is to find a way to connect with your audience. And specifically like every single week, you know, like because our inboxes are so cluttered with just noise, you
Yeah.
really need to cut through the noise. And so figure out what is your way to cut through the noise.
So it could be like a podcast if you have a
Yeah.
podcast, could be Facebook Live, could be a blog, like whatever medium you choose. And then how many times a week out of those, like if you're doing this for 8 weeks, do you need
Yeah.
to be going live or creating content twice a week, 3 times a week? What does that look like?
Yeah. So when I first start out, I usually start the Facebook Lives 4 weeks out. So that's one live a week, 4 weeks out. And then right when I'm about to start the webinar, like when I'm trying to get webinar registrants and
Mhm.
everything, then I'll increase it even once a day for like the 3 days before the webinar.
Okay.
And the Facebook Live can be short, it doesn't have to be super long,
Mhm.
but I'm also pointing people to that webinar. So I'm inviting them to the webinar. The link that I post in the description box is for the webinar. And so I really want to get people primed and ready to like hear my big thing, you know? Yeah.
Okay. So I'm guessing the ones that are 4 weeks out, you're not directing them to the webinar yet because by the time they
No.
get on, they'll be cold. So, like, what would be the call to action then? Would they be getting on your email list or something
Yeah,
like that?
great question. So you can do the call to action in a couple different ways. Number one, you can point them to an opt-in so that they're getting on your list. You can also point them to a wait list for your course.
Okay.
So I know that some people kind of like to spring their course on people, you know, and it's like this huge surprise. I actually find that I get more sales when I've already told people like, "Hey, this is coming,"
Yep.
because then like their pocketbooks are ready, you know,
Yeah.
like they've budgeted for it and everything. And so I start talking about my course just like in passing on webinars or not webinars on Facebook Lives or in my even in my emails that I send out weekly. I start talking about it about 8 weeks out and just mentioning it. And also my VIP waitlist actually gets access to purchase the course 3 days before it's actually open. So
Ooh.
yeah, so that gives people even more of an incentive to like, hey, get on my wait list, you know, and they get the best price, they get like the early bird price basically, and they get all the bonuses and everything, and it just really incentivizes them to like take that action, you know, immediately.
Okay, that's super smart. So you're telling them get on a wait list, and if you get
Yeah.
on the wait list, you'll get like a discount or what's the exact
Yeah.
call to action you're giving them?
So if you get on the wait list, you will be the first to know once the course opens. and you'll get a nice discount plus all the bonuses that I'm offering throughout the entire launch. So yeah, it's pretty amazing, but it just really incentivizes people to take action.
Early, so 3 days before it's
Yeah.
actually open.
Yep.
Okay, and then how much
Exactly.
time do you give them before you close out that
So I
offer?
give them about 2 days, and then I close it down because I use the same sales page that I'm going to use for, for everybody else. So there's a couple things that I need to change on that page and everything in between. But yeah, it's a pretty easy process.
Cool. Okay, and then with the launch runway and creating the Facebook Live videos and everything, are you running ads to those?
Yes, I
Okay.
am a huge proponent of Facebook ads. And I know that it's super duper scary, especially when people are doing them themselves or trying to do them themselves.
Yep.
I don't suggest that you do your Facebook ads yourself unless you've really studied and taken some time to learn ads. It's just one of those things that, like, there's so much testing and tweaking involved that it's really hard to do effectively,
Yeah.
like, unless you know what you're doing.
Especially if you're in the middle of a launch.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Don't make the first time you try out Facebook ads like in the middle of a launch. Like, try it
No.
with an opt-in, put $100 in and like try it a little bit at a time. But this last round, before my launch, about 8 weeks, I guess it was about 4 to 8 weeks before, we started a new opt-in and really like targeted that opt-in for the ideal client for Built to Profit for my course. And so I think we ended up getting like 1,500 new people onto my list within that like 4 week period. And
Nice.
those people were so excited. Like, there was new energy in my free Facebook group. There was new energy on the email list. Like, it was so much excited energy that just kind of really flowed into the actual launch week.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So when you're doing the webinars, what software are you using?
So I really, really love Zoom for webinars.
Okay.
There are a million programs that you can use for webinars, but I've found that Zoom is kind of the most reliable for it. I will tell you this horror story that we recently experienced. So we had this client. She had like kind of the perfect launch starting out. She had a really engaged audience. She had huge numbers on her social media that were really engaged. She was great about showing up ahead of time and everything. And by the time we got to her webinar, she had 3,600 people registered for her webinar. Like, it
Wow.
was really impressive. So she decided to use Webinar Jam, which we've used before in the past, but it's not my favorite because it can be like, I've never seen a webinar go off without a hitch on Webinar Jam. So we get on, and all like my entire team, not my entire team, but my entire team that was working with her for that launch was, on the webinar, making sure everything was okay. And Brianna, our graphic designer, messages me and she's like, I can't get in. It says it's capped at 500 people. And we're like,
Whoa.
what? And so we're all like frantically Googling and searching and figuring out like what's going on. And Webinar Jam had changed recently, and her cap was now 500. And there was no way, like, you would think that like, oh, I can go and pay, an extra like $400 and like up it to however many people. No, there was no way to do that. You had to like email Webinar Jam, like wait a few days, hear back. And so it just, all of our hearts sank because we were like primed and prepped for her to like easily have like $100,000 day, like her first day out the gate. And it just didn't happen that way. She still ended up with a $200,000 launch because we had a contingency plan and all that stuff. But yeah, I've never seen that happen with Zoom. So,
Oh,
yeah, it was heartbreaking at the time, but it all worked out in the end.
so we've had issues like I do like Webinar Jam for the
Hmm.
simplicity of like when
Yeah.
you run multiple webinars and having all the emails set up and not having to redo all of that like you do have to with Zoom. But we spent between like 5 and 10 grand on ads for a webinar with Webinar Jam, and like it just didn't work. It was like maybe our internet connection was bad.
Yes.
I was at Disney World and I don't know what happened. But ever since then, I've learned my lesson of always having a Zoom webinar backup. And
Yes.
then I always have Michelle on our team. She does our customer service. She's always on the webinar with me, and she
Hmm.
knows that link. And so she can just pop it in the chat if we're ever having like connection issues or something like that. So it's like, all right, we got a backup plan. Like we're
Yeah.
we're always ready with some. plan B because
Yeah, I love
yeah.
that. And it's so important to have those plan Bs for like everything because,
Yeah,
I've seen almost every like worst case scenario happen in one way or another. And now that we know what can happen, we always, first of all, you want to test everything beforehand as much as you can. So, all the sales links and make sure that like it's actually tagging all the people on the back end and stuff. But then, second of all, you want to have a plan B just in case. So I love that you have, Zoom as your plan B.
totally. I mean, you have to, especially if you're spending money on Facebook ads and stuff.
Exactly.
Do you know if Webinar Jam still has that like 500 cap?
They do have that 500 cap. So I think it's like
What?
500, 1,000, and then like 10,000. So yeah, and it's just ridiculous to me. I'm like, first of all, it's pretty expensive. So I'm gonna need it to be more than 500 people, for as much as it is. But yeah, they still have that cap.
Insane. Okay, so as you're building out a launch team, what are some of the key roles that you should have?
Yeah, so definitely a VA, definitely a project manager.
Mhm.
And that project manager, if you can't afford a project manager for your entire launch, at least hire a project manager to set up your launch project plan. Because having somebody really who can see all of the holes and potential pitfalls and who understands like every single little piece of the project is going to be really key to having a fleshed out project plan. You don't want to like all of a sudden realize that, oh, you forgot XYZ that's really important for your launch, right? So having somebody that's experienced in planning projects specifically for launches would be great. And then a graphic designer, if you don't feel comfortable doing your own design for your social media and for your sales page and webinar page and all that stuff, definitely have a graphic designer. And I would say that those are probably the three people, unless you're going to be running ads and stuff, but virtual assistant, project manager, graphic designer, absolute key three people.
Got it. What are the 6 pillars of a successful course launch project plan?
Yes. Okay. So this is actually a bonus that I'm giving to your audience.
Oh,
So yeah, so
perfect.
they can download it at thelaunchguild.com/6 pillars. And basically it's all the sections that we use in figuring out our project plans. And then also the questions that we ask in figuring out, okay, what little tasks do we need to include in each part of the sections of the project plan?
Got it.
Yeah.
What are some of the biggest mistakes you see people making when they're launching?
Well, first of all, trying to launch in like a week, right? So give yourself
That's what
time.
I totally did though.
Yes.
Which with the first launch of Pin with Purpose, like I started my business in August and I literally just launched it with webinars in September.
Hmm.
I'm actually like happy I did it that way because
Yeah.
I'm a huge proponent of just taking messy action. And with that launch, like I learned webinars and I got 7 students signed up and made
That's awesome.
$1,000, which
Yes.
like at the time I was so happy. I was like, oh,
Yeah.
people want to learn from me. This is great. But I'm happy I did it that way just to like get it out of the way. And it kind of
Yeah.
took the pressure off of me. And then the next time we did it, we had like 200 people registered for
Yeah.
the challenge that I did, and we made $5,000. And then I got brave and spent like 10 grand on Facebook ads, and then we started kind of scaling from there. But I'm happy we had that just like first messy action, get her done
Yeah.
launch, and then got more legit after
Well, yeah, and
that.
that was going to be one of the other things that I was going to say. I think I see a lot of times that people launch once and they don't make like $100,000, and they're like, "Oh, okay, guess that's a failed launch."
Ooh, yeah,
No, it's the people like when we think about Amy Porterfield and James Wedmore, like they have been using the same product and relaunching the same product for years and years and years and just
yeah,
making it better every single time.
yeah,
So just because you don't make $1 billion the first time around does not mean that you don't have a viable product. Get some testimonials, get some feedback from your students that are in there, and then figure out what to make better, fix it, and then relaunch it.
yep,
That's the people that have the most success in launching are the people that do that.
for sure. What are
Yeah.
some other mistakes you see?
Yeah. So other mistakes, trying to do it all yourself, and not taking action because you're afraid to get into the tech or something. I was telling somebody the other day, there are people who need your product. Like you are the answer to whatever their problem is. And the fact that you're waiting because you don't know how to do the tech is not a good excuse to wait, you know?
No.
So just spend a little bit of money to find a really great tech VA who can support you and help you in the pieces that you don't feel confident in so you can get your message out into the world.
Ooh, I like that.
Yeah.
So good. What are some things that you should do to make sure you stay in that zone of genius during the launch?
Yeah, so definitely schedule everything ahead of time. I am not a huge proponent for what some people called live launching, which is when you're, writing every email the night before and like scheduling social media on the fly. It just feels overwhelming to me.
Stressful.
Yeah, it's so stressful. So like, let's get all of those big things out of the way so that you can really like feel refreshed every morning and like show up on Facebook Live and stuff. I know the first time I launched, I did all the things that I'm telling you guys not to do now. Like I did most of it myself, and I waited to write my emails. And by the time the launch actually got here, like I was so exhausted. I think I showed up on like social media like twice and was like, I'm out. so,
That's
so
that's really
yeah.
important. Whenever we have a launch, I try and clear my entire calendar.
Hmm.
Because like if I'm doing a challenge or even a webinar, like on webinar day, I try not to have any other calls scheduled.
Yeah.
And then when I'm doing like a 5-day challenge, I try not to have anything scheduled during that week. It doesn't always happen that way. Sometimes I might have like a call or two or something like that. But for the most part, because like I try to show up with so much energy
Yes.
and really like serve as much as humanly possible, that if I have a bunch of other things on my plate that's on my calendar, I can't do that without like
Exactly.
losing my voice or getting sick or just like something happening. So I think that's really important too.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. And so I think that that's the key. Just take your time, take the time to like plan everything out so that on that launch week you are ready to go and excited about it.
What are some things you should do post launch?
Post launch. So definitely a post launch debrief. So
Mhm.
you want to kind of look at what worked, what didn't, what were your open rates, what subject lines worked really well, because don't forget you can repurpose a lot of this.
Yep.
So you want to see like what worked really well and what didn't go really well so that way once you're ready to launch again, you're not starting from zero all over again. You're starting from where you left off, and that's how you're able to scale things.
Yep.
So I think definitely doing a post launch. And then, second of all, continuing to nurture your audience. So, just because somebody said no this time around, they weren't quite ready this time around, doesn't mean they're never going to be ready.
Yeah.
But if you are one of those people that just kind of goes away after a launch and only comes back when you're about to launch, people like notice that, like, and it doesn't feel good.
My friend Christina calls it a booty call. She's
It
like, don't show
really
up for
is.
a booty call, like only when you
Yes.
want to sell something.
I liken it to like that relative or friend that we have that like only calls you when they need like $20 or when they
Yeah.
need like help moving, or something like that. You don't want to be that person to your audience. And so I like to like after a launch, because I know that the emails and the social media, like it's a lot for people. And so I like to give them like a little special bonus of some sort. Either I'll create a new opt-in, or like a lot of times there'll be a summit that I'm a part of right after the launch. And so like I use that as like a, thank you so much for being, sticking around during this launch. Here's something else that I'm doing, that kind of thing. And that just really helps people feel appreciated and realize that like you understand that it's a lot for them.
For sure.
Yeah.
Is there anything about launching that I didn't ask you that I should have?
Oh, I don't think so. This was so fun. I just love launches. And I think like, there's no one way to do it. There's no quote unquote right way. Just really enjoy the process, because I hate when I see people that are like feast and famine in terms of launches.
Yeah.
I really encourage all of our clients to be unattached to the outcome, which I know is really hard to do. Like clearly, we have revenue goals, we have what we want, but just remember that like you are still awesome as a person, even if nobody buys your product. Like you still have a message to give, even if it doesn't work out the way you wanted it to this time around.
And I just want to touch again that you said like rinse and repeat, like
Hmm.
launch it. even if you think like in your head it's a flop, like figure out what went well, what went wrong, and then how can you make it better. So I remember the first time we launched, this is a program we actually discontinued, the Impact Blogging Academy. I was so nervous before this launch for whatever reason, like because this was a new product and we were spending like 10 grand on Facebook ads, and I was just like, huh. And then I went and I just thought, I'm like, what's the worst thing that could possibly happen? And I was like, well, you're going to spend this money, but you're going to build your email list
Mm-hmm.
and you're going to really add value and build a connection with your ideal client. And your
Yes.
Facebook group is going to grow and you're going to learn and you're going to get out of your comfort zone and like all these things. And I'm like, even if like
Yep.
no one buys, but we ended up like 5xing our revenue and everything.
I
So
love it.
like,
Yes.
yeah, just a little perspective,
Yeah.
for sure. So what's one of the best books that you've read?
One of the best books. Does it have to be a business book?
Um, you could give both. So if it's like a personal book and then something that's like helped you grow personally, like personal
Okay.
development or something.
So best books is the non-business one is Born a Crime by Trevor Noah.
Mhm.
So good. It's like his autobiography and it's amazing. So best business book recently, I'm currently reading, oh my gosh, I forgot the name of it. It's Pat Flynn's newest book.
Super
What's the name? Super
fan.
Fan. Yes. Currently reading Super Fan, and I will be honest that I'm not a huge reader. Like my goal this year is to read 40 books because I think
Nice.
last year I read like 5. So I'm really working through it, but yeah, I'm enjoying Super Fan right now.
You're not the only one who's actually mentioned that on the podcast.
Yeah,
So for those of you listening, that's a sign that you need to pick up Pat Flynn's book because it's awesome and I've read it and he's great. I love
he
Pat Flynn.
is. Yeah, he is super great.
What does it mean to you to make an impact?
So my word of the year last year was actually impact.
Ooh, nice.
And for me to make an impact, what that word means, first of all, I love being seen as one of the only women of color that has gotten to the status that I have in the operations space. And a lot of people come to me and they say like, oh, we've never seen a woman who looks like them, in this operations space. So that's really important to me to be an impact for my community. But then also just to show other people that it's possible to have a degree in musical theater and somehow end up, running a $500,000 a year business. So there you go.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So cool. Well, where can we connect with you?
Yeah, definitely at thelaunchguild.com. That's the agency side of my business. And then for coaching and courses is tashabooth.com.
Cool. Well, Tasha, you are awesome. Thank you so much for sharing everything launches with us. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.